So these are the four key influences on my development of the idea of epistemic inquiry. The big picture is epistemic inquiry, of course, is about knowledge. Episteme from Greek philosophy is the concept of issues and questions to do with knowledge. So epistemic inquiry is dealing with big knowledge questions. And I'll go into the four big questions that have influenced me. Also, Karl Popper's concept of three different worlds that help us understand the nature of science. And then the case teaching methodology. And then Derek Hodgson's concept of the need for different kind of methods of learning, and the idea that we learn science and we learn about science, and part of the science curriculum should be doing science. More about those later. So the big questions, Jonathan Osborne and Per Kind and Charles Tracy wrote a really, really interesting article in the edition of SSR about framing the secondary curriculum. And these big four questions: what exists, how do things happen, how do we come to know, and what can or should we do with the knowledge, fit in very much with the idea of asking questions leads us to an interesting organization of the curriculum and our pedagogy. I'll illustrate some of those in the sample lessons later. Now, Karl Popper is probably best known for the white and black swan idea, the idea of falsification. Not so well known is his overall overarching kind of philosophy that he talks about three worlds that coexist: the world of physical objects, our world of subjective experience, and how we go from those two to get objective knowledge of the natural world. And that this is an artifact of culture and learning through science. And I find this very, very useful, because our learners, getting back to the what exists, what clearly exists, they have mental models, they have perceptions, they have subjective experience about the physical world. And we're going to try to enculture them through a process of learning to move towards the objective knowledge of science that are present, what we would consider objective scientific knowledge. So I found that this framework is a really, really useful nature of science framework. We'll look at how two lessons deal with this, and the idea that subjective experience in general is bridged by the use of language, that culture and language are so inextricable. And here aspects of the case pedagogy are starting to be involved in this bridging between the subjective experience of our learners and the science we want to teach them, and that this is a dialogic process. In this example of a lesson, the physical objects are very simple, things like candle wax, ice cubes, material blocks, and these can be used to cue in student perception, because this is well understood that our experience, our thermal perception, isn't necessarily part of the objective knowledge world. And this lesson challenges this, feelings of hot and cold, and introduces concepts of how to do qualitative and quantitative observations. And again, through these processes of dialogue, strong cognitive conflicts will need to be resolved with lots of discussions, the use of ideas like how to predict and explain what will happen based on perceptions, and then later looking at observations and kind of reframing explanations. And so this is a movement into the dialogic ideas that mean we're doing science. Doing science isn't just experimental, it is a process of dialogue.